Hello and welcome back to You Me Web3 podcast, the podcast where we discuss Web3 topics and how it influences our future. Meet our host, Mark Foster.
Thanks a lot, and welcome also from my side. My name is Mark. I've been in technology for more than 20 years, in AI, deep learning for a bit more than 10 years, and obviously that evolved into Web3 technologies, AI, big data, blockchain, crypto, etc., and into what we call the metaverse, which is also part of the topic today. So I'm super excited to have Alison with us today. And with that, Alison, maybe a couple words from yourself.
I used to kind of grow up in the care system. So I was in the UK, that means I lived in foster care and in children's homes. So I didn't have any education. So it really is a big jump from going into being an apprentice. I came into the professional field by being an apprentice, did an apprenticeship for 3 years, and that got me a professional qualification. And that from there, it just kind of rolled. And I started as a youth and community worker. I went on to be a therapeutic counsellor for young people, and I trained in that. And then I went on to do my MBA in business, which really was helpful because until then I'd had a really people-centric approach, and it just helped me apply a bit more business sense into that people-centric organisation. Yeah. And so from there, I went all the way into being a director of children's services, then adults, then health, and then was the chief exec of a local government in a district in the country, in the UK. Sorry, it's Friday. And so I decided to have a life change. And luckily, a female founder of a virtual reality company who I'd met as a local government officer approached me to ask me to come and be the co-chief exec of her virtual reality company. And the product was virtual reality films that you use to train people to increase empathy with children and young people who have experienced significant abuse in their lives.
Do you believe that metaverse technologies can help improve serving underserved communities?
Yeah.
How do you see that?
You think about the generational cohesion that isn't quite there often. So I think if I was a CEO still in local government, the first thing I'd be doing is putting up kind of messages out to the workforce. Who is involved in this stuff? Let's come to a kind of round table. Tell us what the heck it is. Yeah. Because often the fear of doing that is because you don't know. I don't know. So I'm definitely not going to get junior staff around the table to talk to me about that. But imagine that, how you really start to empower staff to say, yes, I know this, but you know that. Now let's put those two together and how powerful can we be? Yeah. So I think, and that's one thing in organizations, and I talk about it in terms of public sector, but you could do it in the same in big private sectors. But to be honest, private sector are moving ahead. They are already saying, I'm not sure what it is, but I'm going to invest because I need to not be left behind. I think people have learned from that bubble where social media came along and everyone said Web 2 was here. We didn't say Web 2, but we said this. And I remember being in local government and people going, yeah, we don't all need social media accounts. We'll just do one over here. And now nothing operates without social media accounts. Yeah. And I think hopefully some of those people who are leading remember that. And they definitely are in private sector. So I think they've already started to do that. The question is, are they using their staff in different ways? So definitely should do that. I think you could find cohesion in organizations by exploring that. I think also you can go out to your community. Yeah. Imagine going out to your community and you serve 500,000 people or 1 million people. They're going to be really diverse. And in the main, you're going to have those levels of deprivation. Imagine going into those communities and looking and listening. But so if you do that, you go out and you explore. How are people who are living in different communities? How are they using blockchain? How are people using blockchain to get into contracts with people? How are people using blockchain? If you use the blockchain for local people to have a relationship with elected members, you could probably change the dynamic of who the elected members are. And that's not me saying you want to oust them, but at the moment in the UK and in different countries, elected members are there through 40 to 50% of the vote. That's all the turnout is. 40 or 50% of the community goes out, and that's high. In some areas, it's as low as 37%. If you change that and brought the concepts of decentralized autonomous organizations into community groups and said, right, this is your vehicle for doing it. We're going to put voting on the blockchain. Who would vote? My guess is you would fundamentally change who showed up to vote. Well, you wouldn't show up. They would just do it on the blockchain. So I think you could do that too. You could really change. And if you change it, that fundamentally helps social cohesion, isn't it? Because that's one of the big factors at the moment, that whatever those who are in power say, those who are less advantaged don't feel that they're speaking to them or creating policies to serve them. So I think that that is a way. So you could do it that way. I think the metaverse particularly is a way to empower so many different people.
I have a related question to education. We commonly speak about integrating Web3 technologies into education. The question is, how can we ensure that we will be able to integrate, let's say, all the software which we needed for Web3 education? So it will be
and I think that's, again, always the challenge, because with every new technology comes kind of tech, and tech is expensive, really. And that's where you end up being that those who have the resource, so those who are more in the private sector, and that's the same with education, those who is experiencing a more private education will have more access to that to start with. And that's where, again, we do need the government intervention. We need policy at a government level at every country to be saying, okay, what tech is coming down the road? And actually, how are we making an investment in it now and ensuring that it's in schools? Now, yes, schools will use VR. The biggest hurdle we always found with VR is very expensive. And obviously, as more use it, the prices come down, but it's extremely expensive. And so actually that stops people. So we do need government intervention. We need them to be investing in equipment, but to be doing it fairly across the state. That's why I say we need government, because it's easy for government to say, well, we give schools money and those schools can do it themselves. But actually, that's not enough. They need, actually, every school needs to have it. And that's why I think we need intervention at that level.
Does it also go beyond schools? Because if you look at here in the US, you have the Affordable Connectivity Program. You might be aware of it, where basically underprivileged households get subsidized access to broadband internet, which I think in many ways makes tremendous sense as a base technology to make sure that everyone can afford it. And likewise with the metaverse and actually Web3 technologies, we might need to step those efforts up to make sure that they can fully participate and engage and partake in the future.
It needs to be a utility. It's the same utility. It's a utility, the same as water, heating, and lighting. We're not there, the same as all houses were built with a telephone connection. You don't need that anymore. Actually, we need to take that investment out, and we need to have, we need to have in the UK fibre everywhere, or we need to have 5G everywhere, so that actually you don't have digital poverty based on not being able to get it. So that's where we need to ensure that it's available everywhere.
So removing that hurdle basically removes the digital divide among not ethnicity, but actually the social status, or the more privileged, less privileged, etc.
Which is huge. And I think, people like to say in England we talk about class and that, but I think it's the social status, isn't it? It's it is so still present. And if we don't say that, then actually we are embedding that disadvantage still.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking about ethical concerns, while we will integrate Web3 technologies into education, there might be some ethical concerns appear. And what kind of concerns could it be, and how we can prevent them?
Well, I think there's probably 2 or 3 things I'd say there. With ethical concerns, the less you talk about it, the more danger there is on it. And I am going to bring that back to something that's passionate to me about childhood, like abuse, all of that. When we don't talk about it, it happens. We then move to an area where people said social media was really scary because people could engage with adults in there. And so actually, the way to challenge that is to talk about it. So if you talk about the issues of the metaverse, AI, and its use and the potential dangers, well, then if that doesn't stop, obviously, but if somebody then walks into a scary environment, they don't mind going to tell people. But if all they're told all their life is don't go there, and then they go there and they have a bad experience, they're not going to come and tell you, the adult, you know that place you told me not to go to? I went and oh my God, this happened. Children, young people do that. So firstly, we need to be talking about it, especially in education. Yeah. And in education, we need it. And it's getting more and more in our TV programs. Every vehicle in which you see young people, they need to be, it's normalizing it. Yeah. And the normalization of it with all the risks attached and the dangers and the positives about it. Yep. So that's what we need to be doing. We do need to legislate. We need to legislate about how it is used. Yep. And how people go in and come out of the metaverse. So we need legislation. We need honest conversation about it all the time. Yeah. So we do that. And we also need developers who create this tech to be thinking about, okay, so I know the dangers that have gone before. How do I create something that provides safety? And with that, the typical example is if you go into the metaverse, when you first appear, generally you can appear in an empty room, or you can appear standing on top of somebody, or kind of in somebody. And I say it like that because I really don't like it. And actually, this is creators, it is tech people's responsibility to say, how do we build this? So when people come through the door of our metaverse, they're coming through a door and they're meeting everyone in that space. And actually, do you know, lots of them now are building the kind of protective ring around yourself, which you can put up. And it should be the norm. And again, it's those legislations about what can and can't happen in the metaverse, the same as we have in any other environment.
That was all the questions, and it was a very nice conversation with you, Alison. So I would like to thank you for participating in our podcast, and for our viewers, we're looking forward to see you again in next edition of You Me Web3 podcast.